It fully makes sense to me now why it even got to that point, because I allowed it. I allowed it. To the point where after he cheated, he was almost surprised that I was breaking up with him. I think that's how much of a doormat I was. I don't think I was immoral to him. I don't think I treated him badly. I treated him like he was God. But that was the problem. He was nothing close to that. He acted nothing close to that. But I treated him as if he was. I was told by my ex-boyfriend that he cheated on me. So much time has passed since then, I feel largely emotionally removed from the whole situation. But I have plenty of recordings, mainly voice recordings of me during that time, and listening again 3 years ago, it feels really almost disorienting to hear myself in that state. I was so entirely disconnected from myself, and it's made me think like, how did I let this guy do this to me? Who I am now and who I was 3 years ago are not the same person at all. In retrospect, I've looked back at the relationship and it wasn't just the cheating. That relationship wasn't good even before the cheating happened, but in my head, it felt better in the moment than it actually was, because I don't know, I just really wanted to be loved. And in the beginning, it's all nice, you know, like when there's all the sparks and fireworks, you keep kind of waiting for it to go back to that, and then you realize, you know, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, it's not coming back. But I think you delude yourself into believing the thing you saw in the beginning. But the beginning though, we can go back to that. And it's just delusion. But because I'd realized now that the relationship wasn't worth my time, it's hard to imagine now how that I was losing my mind over this, the fact that I got cheated on by this guy. Even if I could go back and change everything, it's not a waste of time after all, because it's all a part of the process of the human experience, and through that I learned so much. I couldn't imagine my life moving forward. I ended up in the accident and emergency 3 times following, in the month following, presenting with suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, and suicidal plan. It sounds extreme. You know, being cheated on happens. Loads of people do it. It's not uncommon. Why did it hurt so much? When you don't have a lot of love for yourself, it's easy to accept things that you don't inherently deserve, but you feel like maybe you could. And when you combine with that somebody who deflects blame all the time, so if they call you an idiot and you say, hey, I don't like being called an idiot, and they say, well, you know, I'm joking, don't take me so seriously, you know? When they do things like that, whenever an issue is raised, then you start doubting yourself, you know, because all these things can so easily happen when you don't have that inner love and knowing of yourself. When you love somebody so deeply and they decide that instead of just breaking up with you, the better thing to do would be to do the worst thing they could in the relationship, really. Maybe second to, I don't know, murder. You know, there's a few things up there, but you know, I'm being pedantic. Just shortly before he ended up telling me that he cheated. We had a discussion a few weeks before, and we spoke about him not feeling, you know, the spark in the passion for the energy anymore, and I was upset about it, but I told him, look, I've had to end a relationship before based on, you know, things that aren't anything to do with the other person. It's just a case of it's not feeling right, and you need to feel a certain way for a relationship to prolong. Despite the fact that this other person's amazing, it can very easily happen that you don't have the feelings anymore, and it's a very heartbreaking thing to have to end a relationship because of that. The fact that we had that conversation and it still ended up in cheating, I think that's also what fucked up my brain. Because how can we have a conversation about it being okay if we need to break up, but you still chose to do that? It was the betrayal, it was the fact I loved him, it was the fact that the relationship felt great like 4 weeks before, like I went to go and see him, and we had a great time together. I could not understand why this happened. what I did to deserve this. It's interesting that when you often, people say, what would you do if somebody cheated on you? How would you react? And a lot of people say, oh, I'd immediately leave them. Yeah, I'll tell them to fuck off and I would not be interested in him anymore or whatever. But when it actually happens to you, it's always different. I was one of those people who would say things like, yeah, I would just break up with them, easy peasy. But then it happened to me and I didn't do that. I contemplated on it for a long time. I think it ended up being like at least 4 weeks for me to actually break up with him following, which you'd think, why? I am convinced being the victim of infidelity changes something in your brain. The level of vulnerability that you put yourself in when you're in a relationship, emotionally, spiritually, and it feels like somebody's taken your most vulnerable essence and decided to just scrunch it all up and throw it away and just be reckless with it. Somebody that you trust on a profound level, and they were willing to do that. I think it's because it's so easy to avoid. It feels like a conscious act of violence. You love this person intensely and the other person's supposed to love you. I think it's also the idea of feeling like, oh, I wasn't loved then if this happened. I couldn't have been loved if this is how it ended. I had situations regarding my family members, betrayals in the familial unit that deeply, deeply wounded me. So I had that already built into me, and then the cheating on top of it, I think, just took me over the edge. It made a pattern of, you will be betrayed by people you love. You will always love people more than they love you. It's that pattern that I was so fearful of that I kept seeing manifesting in my life again and again. It feels like I've broken that pattern, and the key feels like loving myself, because the signs were there before I got cheated on. I was already being spoken down to. I was already being, don't want to use such language when it may not be necessary, but there was manipulative behavior involved, especially in terms of like deflecting blame and making me feel bad for things that I don't feel like I should have felt bad for in hindsight. The relationship wasn't good. We had very little of a sex life. I felt so incredibly undesirable. It was a long distance one as well, so we couldn't even see each other often, and it's almost like, why did I persevere? I persevered because I didn't have enough love and respect for myself to not tolerate the things that made me feel unlovable. I kept waiting, like I said, for the part in the beginning to come back. Because in my head, I was still living there. The version of him that I met in the beginning was who I expected him to be moving forward. And I just kept waiting for that previous version to make its appearance again. It makes sense, because that was your first introduction to a person and you expect it to be available again. Don't. When it went from that to what the relationship was the majority of the time, it's not surprising that he cheated on me. He didn't have to work for that relationship at all. I gave him unconditional love, unconditional time. Even when I was going through the worst moments in my life, I would give him gifts. The last thing I bought him was a PlayStation 5. Just like shortly after it came out when it was super expensive. And I got it shipped over and everything. And I tied it up in a bow for Christmas. If somebody doesn't have to do anything in return for your love, so you can give all these gifts and they can just, I don't know, show up and not have to do anything special, they've basically won you and they don't have to try hard anymore. If it's too easy, what are they getting out of it? It's not fun anymore. That's how I think it happened. I think it's sad, but I think a lot of people, they require a certain level of, I don't know, lack of peace, some discord, to make the relationship feel worthwhile for them. I'm not sure why. I don't crave discord at all in my relationships. I think the world we live in currently, it promotes numbness. What are the 3 popular legal drugs? Tobacco, caffeine, and of course, alcohol. Alcohol. If you drink enough of it, you'll forget everything you even did. on the night you went out or whatever. Caffeine, you can avoid pain and you can stay awake. And tobacco, for me, it turns my thoughts off. If I'm stressed and I have a cigarette, my thoughts are off. I see these as numbing agents, you know, even with caffeine, like if you take caffeine, it can help you relieve pain. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's all things to help you cope with the world we live in, which is fucking shit. It makes you want to numb yourself. So you have around you just so many emotionally broken people. I think the reason why things like cheating just continues is emotionally numb people cheating on others because they can't even imagine what that could do to them because they don't feel much anymore. And it's sad because if you go further back than that, you think, why are they like this? And even not factoring in the world and things like that. You look at their parents and you're like, right. Looking at the ex-boyfriend who cheated on me, when I reflect on, you know, the parts of a childhood that he told me, and it's like, yeah, you didn't learn any emotional regulation, or intelligence, or maturity. You got everything you wanted in the material realm, but up here, you got no nurturing whatsoever. Although it doesn't excuse what's happened, it explains why. It fully makes sense to me now why it even got to that point, because I allowed it. I allowed it. To the point where after he cheated, he was almost surprised that I was breaking up with him. I think that's how much of a doormat I was. I don't think I was immoral to him. I don't think I treated him badly. I treated him like he was God. But that was the problem. He was nothing close to that. He acted nothing close to that. But I treated him as if he was. I guess that's just gonna maintain a complex of some kind, no? The way I got through that situation is... honestly said, I rebounded. I asked to have sex with somebody I was close with. Not close with. I ended up being closer with him, but it was somebody I knew for a long time, and I asked him for sex. I was under the impression that no feelings would develop because I was manic when I asked about the sex, and I thought for some reason that I could have sex and not have any feelings as a demisexual. Again, it was hypomania. It wasn't, you know, a rational decision. It didn't end up working because I ended up falling in love with him. But the way I got out of feeling shit about being cheated on was honestly directing all of my love and attention to somebody else. I wish I had some better, you know, a better anecdote to say like, yeah, I meditated every day and I did some self-work and I loved myself. But I will say, out of the rebound, I ended up loving myself. That ended up really backfiring the rebound situation. I feel like I'll go into that another time, because it still today has a very profound effect on me. And when you hear situationships, you maybe think, you know, nothing too intense, but that shit can be more intense than the relationships you have, like the fully established ones. But yeah, following the situationship backfiring, I learned to choose me, but it's only after so many times of being let down that you kind of realize you need to fall back on yourself in some capacity. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. Some lessons need to be repeated over and over and over in different ways. If you have gone through, or if you're going through anything similar in terms of, you know, a betrayal from somebody you're supposed to be in a partnership with, a union with, and you're struggling to navigate your emotions and you're wondering, how am I going to even make it out of this situation? I didn't think I was going to be able to make out of the situation, but I wouldn't recommend rebounding. It will be different for everybody. It will be so different. Everybody has different mental health, like states of being, and different scenarios and circumstances and all sorts. But know that the likelihood that it was something you genuinely did wrong is so little. If you've done something wrong, you'll know about it. When I've said that, you'll feel, I know, something will come to your head and you'll be like, yeah, I know I fucked up here. So trust your intuition if you feel like you've done something wrong. As in morally wrong, or, you know, in disrespect to the relationship or to your partner. Infidelity is largely linked to the other person's state of being and their ability to relate to the world around them, the other people in their lives, and also manage their emotional states and mental states, and also their ability to feel things like empathy and compassion. And it can often be linked to, you know, things from childhood and past experiences and nothing that relates to you. It can feel like an attack on you. It's a horrible thing they've done that's affected you, but it's entirely to do with themselves. That doesn't mean it fucking sucks any less though. It fucking sucks to be cheated on. It really, really, really hurts. I hate to say it, but the only way is through. You just gotta keep waking up every day and keep choosing yourself and keep remembering to drink water and to eat and to not drown yourself in drugs. Even though, you know, that was something, you know, that was an outlet for me as well. I started abusing alcohol following. I never abused alcohol before this. The damage it can do is so intense. I understand. I just want you to know that I understand. But one day you'll realise it doesn't hurt anymore. I think support systems are so important during this time, but a lot of people won't understand your pain to even be able to help you, unfortunately. That's even more isolating, because you just want to be around people that bring you up, that make you feel like it's okay. And if you have that support network, I'm so happy for you. I'm so glad. Please utilise that if you can. But I think the most important work to be done here is listen to yourself, analyse your thoughts, your behaviour, start writing things down. If you can't write things down, do voice notes. If you're like me, writing is too much sometimes. Just get your feelings out. Or even if you don't have energy for all that, just observe your thoughts. Get an understanding of what's happening in here. It will feel like there's a cavity in your chest, but it does close. And always remember, you are still worthy of love. Just because somebody was unable to treat you in the appropriate way and make you feel like you aren't deserving of love, that does not mean it's true. It feels like depending on how other people treat you, that's your value. But the truth is, your value is infinite, and you're the one who's going to have to enforce it every single day moving forward. You're going to have to tell the world, I have infinite value, and just because you can't see it, that's not going to be my problem. And I think the way you compose yourself and hold yourself, you'll attract a different sort of person into your life, somebody who is more able to see what you're energetically expressing. You will be better able to weed out those who would maybe down the line cause problems. That's something I've noticed a lot since this happened to me and I've met new people, is, you know, the little things that you ignore in the beginning. They think, oh, they don't mean it. He called me a bitch after I told him I don't like it, you know, it's okay, I'll just let it fly. Those things you start actually keeping, you double down on those. You're like, no, I told you don't call me a bitch, I told you that's not okay. I'm not accepting this. You start not accepting things you used to accept. I think that's what led to this point for me, seriously, is that I accepted so many things that I didn't want to. And if I nipped it in the bud from time ago, it would never have culminated into me being cheated on, because I would have broken up with him far long before that would have even been able to happen. You're stronger than you think. If you have any stories, you know, any feelings you want to share regarding infidelity or betrayals in general, please feel free to share them below. And if you read the comments, please, like, maybe listen to other people who are sharing their stories and share some supportive words, because I really want to make this a place where we can talk about really shit things and maybe get some light out of it. So please share your grievances in the comments, and I'd love to read what you have to say and offer some maybe more specific support where I can, as somebody who's come out the other end. And I actually feel so much happier now than I ever did before any of that even happened. But there's plenty of stories to tell, so I won't go into it now. But I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. I truly wish you all the best. Thank you very much, and I really hope you're having a great day. And yeah, I'll hope to see you next time. If you liked, please leave a like below, and if you like to see any more videos of me me yapping, please give it a sub. But above all, have an amazing day.